Senator Matt Canavan, future Senator Sam Crosby, that's the way it should be. They're joining us now here for a ding-dong about everything around today. So I'm going to start with you, Sam. Help me out about what the talking point is here about Peter Dutton and immigration cutbacks, okay? So when the federal government promises to halve its own immigration number, fine for the economy, when Peter Dutton promises to go a little bit further, that'll destroy the economy. How does it work?
But he's already banked the half, and then this is further on that. Yeah. Look, that's not the point. That's not.
But that's Chalmers' talking point.
And I got to give full points to Peter Dutton for knocking the government off message. You know, within 48 hours or 72 hours of their budget. You know, it's not easy in opposition to do that.
The budget didn't last a week.
Quite genuinely, that was impressive. I have to say though, I think it's an overly simplistic message that I think will resonate immediately with people, and people say, yeah, that is a good point. And then they'll think about it a little bit more, and the realisation will kick in. I mean, for God's sakes, if it was seriously this simple to solve housing problems, to solve congestion, to solve everything else, you don't think Labor would do this?
But the reason they don't is because of the Ponzi scheme that is more population equals more taxpayers equals, we're in surplus.
Well, no, I mean,
the skills. Dutton's not saying no to immigration. Dutton's saying no, like we're going to bring it down a bit more. So you've still got 100,000 skilled workers coming in.
But you still need more, right? We still have thousands upon thousands of unmet need in the thing. But what about family resolution? So in the last government, the family reunification wait time was about 30 years.
I'll be honest, fine by me.
Dude, come on.
I think family reunion, people take the piss.
No, sorry. I had a guy that I used to work with.
You come here because you've got skills, and then we'll bring everyone else out.
I had a guy who used to work with Vinnie's. His mum was in France. He immigrated here 20 years ago. He's an only child. He wanted to bring her over. Couldn't. Just flat out couldn't. He was like very well paid in a former career, had all the money in the world to support his. He wasn't asking for anything of that. Couldn't. 30-year wait list. I mean, come on, it's just not right to not be able to bring your mum over or your dad over.
What? And then Medicare and then aged care on top of all of that. That's why I have my issue.
No. So increase the amount that you need to be able to support them. I mean, there are ways around this that we can still have.
Financially no drain whatsoever, then we can start a chat.
Sure, but but that's not what Peter Dutton's saying. Peter Dutton's saying 25% cut, boom. 1 in 4, boom. You're done.
And you know...
But hold on, but he's also not saying where the number's going to come from, is he? He hasn't said, family reunification, that's gone. Skilled migrant, that's gone.
Fair.
Fill the details out for me a little bit, and then we can have more of a conversation.
But Senator, I thought he did put some categorisation on it, but get into it, Senator. Yeah. Fill the gap that I don't know.
Well, he has said we would reduce the refugee intake back to its long-term average of just over 13,000 a year.
Excellent.
The rest will be a cut to the broader permanent migration rate. I mean, the key difference now between the government and the opposition is the government's just saying we'll reduce the flow into the country, the net overseas migration. We'll, of course, do that as well. But what we'd also do is reduce the number of people transitioning from a visa through to permanent migration. That means some people will go home. And so that will add ease. That will add additional ease to the housing market here. Now, the simple fact is both parties now agree that migration needs to come back, although Jim Chalmers seems to be off on his own planet that this is a terrible thing. But the Prime Minister and the opposition leader didn't think that. The key now for the Australian people leading up to the election is who do you trust to do that? The Labor Party, over the past 2 years, have botched the reopening of Australia's border post-COVID. We had to open our border. We'd had taken no one in for over 2 years. But they let the floodgates open and completely lost control of our border. Now, once the horse has bolted, they're saying, look, trust us, we'll close it now. Well, I don't think that the Australian people are going to put a lot of trust and faith in the very mob who have lost control of the border to start with. So we definitely need to do this now, and it's just a matter of trust. Who do you trust? Peter Dutton, who was a very strong migration minister, understands the system. I think it's time he gets put in charge of our border so we fix this up and alleviate some of the stresses that are occurring in our housing markets and on infrastructure in our major cities across Australia.
Yeah, again, can we just play the Jim Chalmers grab? Again, right, so when his government's pulling back, it's not the end of the world. When the Liberal Party plans to go a little bit further, it's the end of times. Have a look.
If you think about the relationship between migration and housing, for example, of the less than 5,000 homes purchased by foreigners in the most recent data, around 1,300 of them were established homes. And so this will make nowhere near the difference that he is claiming that it will, and that's because he hasn't thought it through. His budget reply was dark, it was divisive, intentionally so, and the net effect of all of that would be that he would destroy the budget and damage the economy.
But when you're doing, please, I actually think that one of the reasons why you have not heard Labor responding to the other shoe to drop when it comes to the housing market, which was to ban foreign buyers, is they don't know how to respond to it, right? $6.6 billion worth of foreign investment was made into the Australian property market, not the commercial market, that's the residential market, all right? If there's a house worth $1 million, you can imagine how many houses here, right? That was just in 1 year alone. I think that, to me, is the one that's actually going to move potential voting needles and the conversations of people nodding their heads around a barbecue. But Sam, what do you think?
Look, I think it's actually an idea that's worth exploring. I do. I don't think governments should be so resistant to reject all ideas from the opposition simply because it comes from the opposition. I mean, look, frankly, I think the easier place to start on that are countries that don't allow Australians to buy
reciprocal rights.
Reciprocal rights.
Fair point.
So, if you can buy property in America, then sure, the Americans can.
But we can't in China, we can't in Japan.
But if there's other countries, then, well, no, you shouldn't be able to buy it here if our citizens can't go to your country and buy one there.
Yeah.
But I think it's an idea worth exploring.
Senator, again, you pick a poll, it all comes down the same way, that about 40% of people think that the budget is going to push up inflation. We all hope that they're wrong, but it's certainly a significant number of people who think that's the case. We'll see how many of them are in the room of the Reserve Bank in the next couple of weeks. But again, this budget, all the noise, all the carry-on, all the tax calculators, all the rest of it, the reality, I think, dawns on people here that average tax cut, $36 a week, average power bill credit, $25 a month. Prime Minister, not one, but 2 new private jets.
Look, I think people understand this is a pretty cynical budget. It's an attempt to try and buy people's votes, and pretty obvious that that's what it is. So, I mean, do you remember a few years ago, the Gillard government had that Cash for You program? I think it was about $200 or $300, and they launched it. We're going to give you cash, and it was a hashtag Cash for You, and that went down like a lead balloon because, I mean, people I think get the fact that what the Labor Party has done here is they've failed to deliver on a promise of cheaper electricity. So they've taken your taxes that you pay them, you work for, you pay the government, and then turn around giving you a little bit of that back. I'm sure most of your viewers pay more than $300 a year in taxes. They give you a little bit of it back and want thanks for it. I mean, that's the approach here, and I don't think people are that stupid. And that's why you're seeing the poll results like you are here today. I think most people see through this sort of stuff, the cynical exercises that politicians go through, and hopefully they do, because what our country needs is some leadership. We are living in pretty tough and interesting times, and we need some tough leaders willing to make tough decisions here and not simply tell the Australian people fairy tales that somehow green hydrogen is going to come along and save the day, that somehow handing out just cheques full of money is the way to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and make ourselves more wealthy. We've got to do hard things to become more productive, to become more wealthy and become more prosperous as a society. And unfortunately, the Labor government this week showing they can't do that and won't do that. So they don't, I think, have the right medicine for this country.
I was listening to the radio today and I heard one of the many, many ads that $40 million worth of taxpayer-funded advertising is going to be to talk about the tax cuts. Apparently the Made in Australia stuff, similar amounts, so the best part of, $80 million is going to be spent, driving home 2 big messages for the government. When you were talking about, again, how people will respond to things like, even deeper cuts on immigration. Do you think that Labor has got a winning hand when they say every household for power and every worker on tax cut, even though I'll argue on the is it enough?
Yeah, I don't know is the answer. I don't know. I kind of like that there is something unifying about it, in the same way that you can make the same case that people earning $1 million a year shouldn't get access to Medicare, but there is something beautiful and egalitarian about it that says, no. Everyone in Australia is entitled to a basic standard of healthcare. Everyone in Australia does get some sort of bill relief. Is there a more elegant way of doing it? Possibly and probably. But this is the model that they've gone for. I'm personally not going to complain when my power bill comes down by $300. And look, to Matt's point that this is all somehow a result of the
vote buying exercise.
Yeah, maybe they shouldn't have made that promise 2-3 years ago, but they did, and they were elected on that basis.
It wasn't a teensy tiny little one.
And people like you, Paul, have been on this show every single week saying, "Bring it down, bring it down, bring it down." So who's the daddy? Who's the daddy of this thing, Paul?
The promise wasn't to deliver this cheaper power bills by using taxpayer dollars. I mean, we're borrowing this money. It's $3.5 billion in total. We've got to borrow it from overseas. Someone has to pay it back. So we are mortgaging our kids' futures, our grandchildren's future, to give ourselves a power bill cut. When what we were promised was that the government's investments in green energy would deliver this without having to do that, without having to mortgage our children's future. So what are we going to do here? We're going to keep giving ourselves $300 off each year now, forever? Because the promise was $300 off, and it'll be $300 off forever, right? Because there'd be lower power bills forever. Are they going to do another $3.5 billion next year, another $3.5 billion after that? Soon enough, you're talking about real money. This is not the way to make our economy work better. Clearly, the government's energy policy has failed, and this week's handout of $300 is an admission of failure from the Labor government.